Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Well, if you thought the forecast, the models predicting anywhere from a high of over 2 million deaths in the U.S. from COVID to a low of 60,000, all of which have been wrong, even dead wrong, have been a roller coaster ride. You think that's a roller coaster ride? How about the financial markets? Catastrophic slides, recovery, down again, up again, as the Fed drops interest rates to rock bottom to stimulate a dying economy. So where do we really stand with the economy 2 months into the shutdown as we finally look to reopen at long last? Here to answer that simple question with the more complicated answer is the man who always unwinds these complicated financial and fiscal matters for us, LibertyNation.com economics correspondent Andrew Moran. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. So, it appears, at least to the untrained eye, that markets have stabilized. The Dow's been steadily hovering around 24,000 for a while, recovering about half the value it lost in the crash that started the descent. Do we have reason, justifiable reason for optimism, or is this more wishful thinking considering the current dire straits of the economy?
There are two main factors to explain this rally. The first is, of course, that the market had already priced in a lot of this damage. So they're forward looking. They're looking to economies reopening, businesses opening again, things like that. And the other major factor is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has pumped so much liquidity into the system, trillions of dollars. And Jerome Powell, he left the door open yesterday during his delivered remarks about how the Fed could intervene again with even more stimulus, trillions more, and he urged the Congress to also implement more fiscal stimulus. So there is all this money being flown into to Wall Street. So Wall Street is pretty much it's being insured for any losses that it may incur, any more buying that it's going on. But it's what's interesting. Before we had this meeting, I was looking at data during the Great Depression, and you had these multi-month rallies and spikes before you had these considerable pullbacks in the 1930s. So there's a lot of precedent for bear market fakes. But I think overall there is still reason to be optimistic about the stock market, basically because of the Fed's do whatever it takes approach to monetary policy, which is what every other central bank has conceded to doing, do whatever it takes. And as what's funny about it is that the European Central Bank, this was their moniker even before the financial crisis. That's how anemic their growth was.
Well, now, three basic scenarios have been laid out for the condition of the economy when the virus or the worst of it finally passes: recovery, recession, depression. Which is most likely to occur in your view, and why?
Well, I think we already are probably in a recession. We still have to wait for the GDP numbers, but it's safe to say that the U.S. is going to be in a depression. So you have that checked off on your list. I think a depression would only happen if there's a second wave. If a second wave happens in the fall, and the country and other countries and American states have to adopt similar restrictions or perhaps even shutdowns. Though I think Jared Kushner, he said the other day that it's probably not going. Another nationwide lockdown is not going to happen. So that's a possibility. But overall, a recovery is inevitable. It's just the speed of it really depends on a multitude of factors. Fiscal monetary policy. Will there be this pent up demand that a lot of business experts and the White House has said there's going to be once the lockdown's lifted? And then you also have the concern about the severity of the coronavirus. There's still so much uncertainty about the makeup of the coronavirus, and will it mutate? Is it going to be is it benign? All these different factors that you have to consider. And Jerome Powell, he even said during his speech that the recovery is going to be slower than you would want. The thing that you have to do is pump more money into the economy to ensure that you do have a reliable recovery. 3, 6, 9 months.
Now, China, their outright dishonesty and intransigence in letting the virus spread for weeks before telling us how serious it was, among other things, has led to widespread criticism, of course, of the Chinese and our relationship with them, our dependence on them. Are you picking up on changes in the financial markets in terms of relationships with China?
Well, actually, I wrote a few weeks ago about how the made in China trend is probably going to shift in the next few years. You're already starting to see it gradually happen. You have some American companies shifting their operations to Taiwan and Thailand, another a cheap labor jurisdiction, and I'm backed up by a lot of the Wall Street titans who are warning about they're going to have more regional supply chains. You're going to have capital leaving China. The only thing that the issue is that they've developed such a huge presence in China because they want to tap into that growing middle class that's occurring in Beijing. But overall, there's going to be a shift away from made in China. The thing I'm worried about is that the government's going to mandate it as opposed to allowing the market to dictate it.
Thank you for clarifying a lot of things and trying to make some sense out of this crazy roller coaster ride of an economy. Stay well.
Thank you.
Andrew Moran, economics correspondent for LibertyNation.com.